This is BYU Sports Nation, presented by The BYU Store. Simulcast on BYU Radio and BYU TV. And now from Studio B, your hosts, Jerem Jordan and Brian Logan.
BYU Sports Nation is live, your day-to-day play-by-play in Studio B, presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere. It's Wednesday, August 18th. It's great to have you with us. Hey, yesterday at practice, the team was asked if cereal is a soup. What's your opinion on this, Brian?
Nope, it's not.
I don't think so either.
It's not at all.
I think it's weird if someone thinks that cereal's a soup.
I'm confused on why this is a debate. To be honest with you,
Okay. Yeah.
It's like an oxymoron kind of.
It feels weird. Okay, soup
really
is
weird.
defined as one version, a liquid dish typically made by boiling meat, fish, or vegetables in stock or water. Yeah, it's not cereal.
So
vegetables the key to that, probably.
So okay, that makes sense because as the show was starting, and I was going through this in my mind, and my head started hurting because it doesn't make sense.
Yeah. I
thought maybe the issue is it being hot, right? So
oatmeal can be
like
hot.
Oatmeal.
Yeah.
Then I started to wonder, okay, what's oatmeal? Is that considered a cereal?
Oh, definitely.
Or is it a soup? So then
oatmeal is definitely a cereal.
Okay, so I was thinking, well, is it hot or is it cold as far as the definition of what soup is?
It depends when Tate chooses to eat it. Because if he eats it when I ask him to eat it, it's hot or warm.
So if we're going off of vegetables, which are disgusting, then it's not a soup.
Okay, the team was asked this as they were walking into practice the other day. Here's what they had to say.
Cereal or soup? No, absolutely not.
Cocoa Puffs. That's soup.
No. Frosted Flakes? No. Who said that? I've never heard that in my life. That is dumb. Sorry.
Mason Wake. There were a few that said yes. Now, I would love to hear their opinion. But anyway.
We don't judge. We just pray. We just pray for
We don't judge. We just think that opinion was weird. Here's your show lineup. The latest from fall camp, week 3. We'll have a little fun with Disney's What If in the BYU sports sphere. Some great answers from you guys already. NFL cuts, who made it through, who didn't. Spencer Linton goes one-on-one with receiver Gunner Romney, the best receiver in the country between the twos. And Dax Milne is impressing his coach in Washington. And the final tally on his eBay card. We bid on it. We did not win it. What did it go for? It started at 99 cents. We will tell you. But first, here are today's headlines.
BYU football fall camp continued yesterday as the team continued to practice indoors due to air quality concerns.
That's over now because it rained all last time.
Yes, but they'll still be inside, I'm assuming.
But they're still
After practice, head coach Kalani Sitake gave us an update on the quarterback competition.
It's just a matter of the guy winning out the spot outright, and as long as they keep performing and doing well, all three of them individually, then they're going to make it really hard for us. But for the coaching staff, we have to figure out the guys that are going to put us in the position to have the most success, and that's what we're trying to figure out in the next few practices.
2.5 weeks to the game, Brian. They're close to figuring that out, hopefully.
Yeah, hopefully we beat Utah.
Yeah, that's week 2. NFL rosters had to be cut down to 85 yesterday. All but 2 Cougars made it through the initial cuts. Diane Lake was cut last week by the Rams. Leva Hifo was let go by the Arizona Cardinals. Hopefully they land on their feet somewhere else. The next cut down is August 31st. That's the last one. Down to 53. And then you have some guys with practice squads. Some guys will go on waivers and maybe find a different fit. Remember, Taysom Hill was cut at the last second by the Packers, grabbed by the Saints, and could be the starting quarterback.
Yeah. If these guys get cut or if we hear news about it, don't panic right away.
Panic later.
And I think Canada is starting up again too, so you can, have an opportunity there, have an opportunity in arena football. I think arena football as well. So as long as you continue to get paid to play, that is the goal for these guys.
Which the walk-ons are now too.
Yes, exactly.
Oh wait, no, it's sponsored. I'm just kidding.
Same difference. Head coach of the Washington football team, Ron Rivera, said Dax Milne is coming to his own in Washington.
Nice.
And Zane Anderson was getting some first-team reps in practice yesterday with the Kansas City Chiefs.
Oh, Zane
How
Anderson?
about that?
The next Daniel Sorensen? Let's go.
That's his replacement?
Daniel's like, I don't like this, actually. Yoeli Childs wrapped up his NBA Summer League with the Lakers with a 4.7 rebound performance in Vegas. He put up 7 points and 6 rebounds a game in 4 contests.
Zach Salius has signed with BC Vera in the Georgian Super League. Salius averaged 6.6 points and 4 rebounds in 32 games for BYU in 2019 and 2020.
That's Georgia the country, not the state. And Leela Naliai won the Utah Women's Stroke Play Championship yesterday, outdueling teammate with BYU Women's Golf Kirsten Fotu, who finished second.
Nice.
Fellow BYU Cougar Addie Christensen finished fifth. Naliai adds the Utah Stroke Play Championship to her state amateur championship from earlier this summer. Congratulations. All rise and shout. It's time for What's Trending.
You're talking about it, and so are we. It's What's Trending on BYU Sports Nation.
We love us some Marvel on this program. Disney Plus's new show as of last week. Episode 2 dropped today. Don't tell me anything. I'm going to watch it later with the fam. Called What If? In Marvel, if one moment had changed, the ripple effect that it would have on the rest of that storyline and that character, right? So we have a little fun today with that in BYU sports history. What's the greatest what if in BYU sports history? It's also our question of the day. Weigh in on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter.
To me, first, when we talked about this, the first thing that jumped in my mind was, what if Brandon Davies played in the 2011 NCAA tournament?
I feel like that's what a lot of people are going to go to. I think we all wonder, right? Is BYU making the Final Four?
Yes.
It feels like they probably would have.
Yeah. Do you think we win too? Do you think we win?
I believe Duke beat Butler, right? Was that year?
Let's just say yes.
Or was that a year or two before? Yes, that one's hard. That one's hard, right? Obviously, Brandon Davies, sits out the last couple of games of the regular season. BYU is a 3 seed, goes to the Sweet 16, loses in double OT to Florida. Yeah, in New Orleans. That would have been fun.
The Jimmer mania.
Yep. That was a fun ride regardless, but it could have been more fun.
And speaking of Jimmer and the NIL, like I've heard a lot of people say that Jimmer wouldn't have made millions of dollars.
It might have been tens of millions then, if that's what is being said.
I've heard that people have said he wouldn't make that much, which I think is crazy.
Well, no, stop reading Cougar Board. Okay, one I want to bring up that you and we have a ton of them is one that I know you and I have talked about. What if Taysom Hill never got hurt, like a single time?
Man, we'd have like three rings right now.
He might be
Nationals.
be on the Mount Rushmore of BYU quarterback because I mean some people might even put him on there anyway. But if he never gets hurt, homie has like 4,000 rushing yards. Yeah, probably at BYU. Because he had 1,300 as a sophomore.
What was the year when he was getting all the Heisman?
Junior year, 2014.
Yeah, and they were 4-0, right?
BYU might go undefeated that year.
No.
No,
they will.
There's only 3 Power 5s on that schedule. That's why.
I think they would have, man.
That 2014 would have validated independence in a way that didn't until last year, right? That's one. What if the Lavelle Edwards decided he wouldn't throw the ball? Like, that decision changed the course of this university forever.
Think about all the quarterbacks.
Think about all the great offensive coordinators.
What would Zach be right now? Probably still be in
Zach would have gone to Boise State.
Still would have been in school.
He would have gone to Boise State. What if Zach Wilson had actually gone to Utah? They probably would have put him at safety. At CL_living. What if Lavelle had decided to keep with the single wing instead of adopting a passing game? Yeah, Lavelle Edwards' decision, right, to pass the ball changed the course of history.
I like this one. What if BYU was invited to the Pac-12 in 2011 or in the 60s?
Okay, the 60s, let's talk about it. Arizona and Arizona State are added in the late 60s to the Pac-8, making it the Pac-10 for a long time, right?
Yep.
But yeah, what if it wasn't Colorado? They stayed in the Big 12, and it was BYU with Utah. That would have changed a lot of things.
Everything.
You would have missed the Pac-12 by a year, by the way.
I would have redshirted.
Your senior year?
Yep.
That happened with
I was thinking about doing it. I was thinking about redshirting.
Really?
Because Bronco had announced that, we were going independent. And I remember
excited about it?
When he even on top of that, Joe, my cousin, he was there on his recruiting
trip. Really? I didn't know that.
He was on his recruiting trip. So yeah. That's my cuz. That's my cuz. Shout out to Rancheritos. But look, he was there as well. So I was like, yo, I think I should really redshirt because I could get another year. And the biggest thing with me was the TV contract. So I was like, what?
You were excited to play on ESPN?
I'm about to be on ESPN every week? Somebody kick me down the stairs so I can get hurt.
You joke. Who was it? Preston Hadley at Weber State fell down the stairs at Weber State at
did.
Southern Utah as a coach.
Really?
Hurt his ankle.
I didn't know that.
Yeah, too soon, man.
My
It's been
bad.
like 5 years.
My bad, Preston.
What if, I brought this up before, but what if the Pioneers never left back east and stayed in either New York, Ohio, Missouri, or Illinois? Would BYU be in the MAC? Would BYU be in the Big Ten?
I know I wouldn't.
I don't think BYU would
I
be in
wouldn't
the
have
Big Ten.
attended no school in the
You,
East.
you wouldn't have gone?
Nope, too cold.
Here's another one. What if Brian Logan was 6'2"? Would you have played in the NFL?
Yep.
You think so?
Yeah. Easily.
The only thing that held you back was the perception of height being held against you.
Yeah. That I was really short. Shorter than.
That's what I just said, Brian. Okay, here's one that the ASB might be interested in. What if there was no honor code? I don't think that BYU would be BYU, obviously, without an honor code. I think that because there's been an honor code, BYU's been what it is.
Yeah.
Obviously, there are things within the honor code that are fun to discuss, but I think it would be interesting to think about that. That's a what if.
I almost think that
A certain student and a certain student athlete sometimes comes here because they want to be at BYU with said honor code.
I
So
almost think
interesting.
the brand wouldn't be as strong as it is.
I agree.
At all, because regardless if you agree with the honor code or not, want to live it or not, that is something that separates, BYU from
Yes,
almost every college, right?
for better or worse. And those
Regardless of your opinion.
and those that want to be here, and those that don't aren't, right?
Right.
So it is what it is. What if Riley Nelson had found Cody Hoffman against Notre Dame in 2012?
Man,
Notre Dame was undefeated.
those are one of them plays that really, that's like, that just hurts you. Like,
Yeah.
ooh, yeah.
What if Colby Clausen doesn't knock out Sam Bradford? Do you still win the game against Oklahoma in 2009?
Negative.
You think Oklahoma wins?
No, I'm just playing. We win. I
think you still win?
I think we still win.
Yeah.
And the main reason why was because our scheme was really good in regards to disguising our blitzes and really showing a lot of different fronts and confusion. So much to where the very next week we had, I don't know, maybe like 10 NFL teams coming that came to practice. Yep, serious. Came to practice and they said specifically, what play was that on the blitz that got Sam Bradford hurt? What was that play? So they came.
Do you remember the play?
Nope.
That's what you said, the call of the play. Very nice.
I don't remember.
And that's why you're not a quarterback. Okay, our question of the day. What's the greatest what if in BYU sports history? This could go anywhere. We're entering the multiverse of options here. Let's go to Voice of the Nation.
This is the Voice of the Nation on BYU Sports Nation.
Okay, weigh in on Facebook, Instagram, and Twitter. There's been great reaction so far. At BF Webster on Twitter. 3. We're going to go 3, 2, 1 here. 3. Witt takes the BYU job instead of Utah. It's a game changer.
Ooh.
It's a game changer. BYU plays incredible defense, mediocre on offense, great specialist. That's not BYU football. Number 2, Taysom Hill stays healthy all 4 years, and the number 1 what if. Number 1, the 1983 team and Steve Young beat Baylor back-to-back national championships. Because remember, BYU finished 7th with the 1 loss in 83. I think BYU needed 83 to get to 84. I'm not sure they win both.
Yeah, there has to be some momentum.
Let's be honest. In 84, BYU got lucky. The right teams lost at the right time. BYU had the right schedule, the right people.
Yeah.
That all fell into place. That was truly magical. Yeah.
Do you think we would have more clout and I would say, like, I won't say more recognition, but I guess
If 83 had won, then 82?
yeah, because all I hear is people say, "Oh, you got one title. Ooh, that was you guys got luck." You know what I mean? Like the validation of it.
Maybe, but it's been a long time. Like, beware of being Nebraska.
Okay.
Oh, we were a program. It was a while ago. Like, luckily BYU did something last year.
Yeah.
To be like, no, we're
What have you
important
done with me
now.
lately? Type of thing.
Yes.
Did you get, okay.
At Nickley15 on Twitter. What if Washington agreed to play BYU in Provo, thus nixing the Coastal Carolina game last year? Honorable mention on the last one. What if Zach Wilson came back for 2021? If Zach Wilson's the quarterback, let's say Zach, Brady, and Dax, they all stay.
Championship. We're going. Yeah.
What do you mean?
National championship.
Okay.
Playoffs. All that. All the above. I would
be
say
aiming for 10 wins.
I would say minimum 2 losses. Minimum.
Minimum meaning they would at least lose 2?
Yep.
Not maximum?
Maximum. That's what I meant.
Okay.
You know what I meant when I said what I thought.
I got you. Just trying to clarify. DB
That's why you're my homeboy.
Got you.
My homie.
DB_Nelson22 on Instagram. What if men's volleyball got to finish the 2020 season? Oh, I think they beat Hawaii for the Natty. I really do. 21, unfortunately, we felt like was the same team, but it wasn't. Okay, detailing Executive 55 BYU on IG. I wonder what he or she does. What if we have a season like we did last year against our schedule this year? That'd be special. That'd be really that'd be New Year's Six-esque.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
Like there'd be a chance.
There wouldn't be. Well, no, I wouldn't say a chance, man. That's like guaranteed.
One loss, you're in a pretty good spot. You have to out-at-large a Power 5 team.
Oh, that's right.
There's no automatic
Stupid
access.
rules.
Okay. Stupid rules. We got BYU. We were just talking about that. Continue to weigh in on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram.
Coming up, how far will personality take you? Specifically, Bronson Kapusi.
What Aaron Rodgers said about it, pretty interesting. And Spencer Linton goes one-on-one with Gunner Romney, the best receiver in the country, between the twos. This is BYU Sports Nation.
Lately, we've all been presented with some unexpected challenges, and it's times like this that require business leaders to stretch their creative muscles. BYU is also working hard to keep our athletes healthy and strong to perform for Cougar Nation. So while things might look a little different right now, we're also searching for partners who want to preserve and grow their market share. If you'd like to have a conversation about strengthening your business, send an email to sponsorship@byu.edu today, and let's talk about tackling your challenges.
One thing Mountain America has learned over nearly a century of helping members achieve their financial dreams is that we are stronger together. We achieve great things together. And while we are still here to serve you, we know together feels different right now. It might take some time, but we're looking forward to the day when we can gather together again. We're still here, guiding you forward.
They prefer to be bringing the heat, getting set for success, demonstrating their drive. But when their blood and sweat turns to tears or anything else, we lay the groundwork for BYU's athletes to hit the ground running again, and you as well. Intermountain Healthcare, official medical provider for BYU Athletics.
This is Countdown to Kickoff.
You guys, I'm done.
Players are tough. Broadcasters are way tougher than players.
Absolutely.
Algier into the end zone. A little punctuation.
That is how you start Countdown to Kickoff.
Touchdown! Isaac Rex laying out for the score.
I'm going to mark that one down. That's big enough.
Early spicy, mark it down.
Mark it down.
Yeah.
BYU Sports Nation is presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere.
BYU TV is sending 2 Cougar football fans to the season opener against Arizona in Las Vegas. One grand prize winner gets a trip for 2, including flight, transportation, and lodging. Plus, obviously, tickets to the game. 5 second-place winners will receive a BYU football fan pack and a Roku. Follow BYU TV Sports on social media for the details. Winners will be selected, and random entry does not guarantee the prize. The winners will be announced August 20th on BYU Sports Nation. Today's word is touchdown.
Awesome. 88,000 entries so far. 37 hours.
88,000.
Yeah.
Wow.
Hope for 100,000. Let's go. Let's go. Which brings us to this. BYU plays in Vegas against Arizona in how many days?
Countdown to the Wildcats.
17 days. 17, Brian. 2.5 weeks. Are you kidding me?
Nice, man. Our voice really just synced up kind of beautifully.
Agree to disagree. It's all good. Okay, we're live in Studio B. Jeremy Jordan alongside Brian Logan. Great to have you with us. Gunner Romney is, of all the returning receivers in FBS that caught at least 30 passes last year, highest yards per catch average of anybody, 19.7. Zach Wilson isn't back there. He's going to have a different quarterback. But he was awesome last year. He's going to try and get in the end zone a little more than those 2 touchdowns. I'm calling for 6+ this year.
Why not 7?
Make it 7+. 6+ would be 7. So there you go. Here's a one-on-one with Spencer Linton and Gunner Romney.
Gunner, how was life as a newly married man amidst training camp at BYU?
Man, I don't know how I did fall camp when I was single. You know, I go home and I spend like half hour with my wife and then I go to sleep. So, I mean, it must have been pretty boring life when I was single out there. But, you know, it's good. It's super busy, but, you know, you got to keep the wife happy too.
So is this the secret ingredient that you've been missing to get into the end zone more? You just needed to get married. Maybe this is what's going to push you into the end zone some more?
You know, hopefully I can, it somehow springs me 1 yard forward. But, I mean, I guess we'll wait till season to find that out if that's the secret ingredient.
Fair enough. Now, you and I the other day were joking offline a little bit about a report that surfaced on social media that you were the starting quarterback projected for BYU. We know that's not the case, or is it the case, Gunner? Is BYU hiding something from us?
No, far from it. If I'm the quarterback, then sorry, we're not going to win a single game this year. I hate to break it to BYU fans, but no, that's not me. I can't throw a ball into an ocean if I was standing in a rowboat. Let's just say that.
Wow. Okay. Some downright honesty. I appreciate that. Okay, we'll get to the quarterback situation in just a moment, with you out of it, of course. And fortunately for you, you've been a very productive receiver for BYU and looking to take that next step this year. What have you been working on specifically this offseason to try and better your own personal game?
For me, I've just been working on, separation. I've been working on different release packages off the line of scrimmage, and just trying to be more physical. I mean, I've said this every single year, but trying to get bigger and faster. And I feel like I have progressed every single year. And so I'm just trying to take that next step and create more separation in my short game. I think last year I was a big part of the offense and explosive plays and taking the top off the defense. But this year I want to be that all-around guy that we can go to on any down and be able to create separation at any level.
Love it. Gunner Romney is with us on BYU Sports Nation. What's the best part of the wide receiver room right now collectively?
The best part is just the depth, how many people we have there. We have at every single position, whether it's the X, Z, or F, inside slot. We have people that can play everywhere, and so many different body types, so many different, we have a bunch of big guys, we got like Neil and Keanu and Samson Nakua that are big dudes that can create mismatches on the outside. We also have tons of, smaller bodies that are quick, that can create separation. And so I think just the variety and the sheer numbers of people we have on the field, I think it's going to create a lot of problems for defenses.
If the atmosphere is different in the room right now, how so compared to what it was last year?
Yeah, no, last year I think it was me, Neil, and Dax, and I think it was kind of solidified as those were the guys. But this year, I think everything's amped up a little bit more because we don't know what the rotation is going to be like. We don't know if there's going to be 4 or 5 guys that are rotating throughout, or if it's going to be, just like 2 or 3 guys like it was last year. So I think there's a lot of competition in the room, and I think a lot of people are fighting because they want to play and they want to get some time. They want to make their way into that starting role, and so I think just the intensity is for sure amped up.
How has that impacted your role and maybe your own personal status?
For me, I love it. I love the competition. It helps me not get complacent. And I feel like it's been a big opportunity for me to step up as a veteran and as a leader, to help guys that want to get better and that want to push it. I'm just trying to be unselfish and trying to help those guys out because it'll help the team out in the end.
There's a lot of intrigue about the Nakua brothers. You already talked about Samson and Puka a little bit, but what do those guys bring to the atmosphere of BYU football training camp?
Those dudes, they have a lot of personality. They're always energetic. We come in at 7 in the morning and they're already yelling and jumping around. And so I think, during fall camp, things can get kind of boring. All the days can start blending together, but you need those type of people to come in and energize things up and make practice fun. And that's what they've been doing so far. It's never a dull moment when they're in there. In meetings are fun. We're all laughing and joking around while we're doing our business. And so I think just those personalities itself, like take away their on the field performance, just their personalities, you can already see the impact it's having.
Gunner Romney is on BYU Sports Nation, all access from BYU football training camp. Your buddy Dax Milne made his NFL debut with the Washington football team. What did you think of his limited catches and his 19-yard punt return?
I mean, I thought they should get the ball to him more. It's so cool seeing him play on the big stage like that, seeing him make a couple catches, have a big punt return. It's awesome. I mean, it's motivation for me because I want to be where he's at next year. But it's super cool just seeing my guy succeed like that.
Yeah, what type of communication do you have with all of your former teammates? Because there are a bunch that are all trying to collectively or individually, I should say, make their rosters wherever they are.
Yeah, I mean, I'm friends with all of them, but I'm a little bit closer to a couple of them. So I've stayed in a little bit more in touch with a couple of them, like Zach and Dax. I talk to a lot, and it's cool seeing their process and just seeing their journey and talking to them about that. It's really exciting to see because I know that all of them are going to do big things, and they all are. I mean, you see Isaiah making big plays with the Colts, and you see Kyrus is running with reps with the ones. A lot of people from BYU are making a lot of good things happen in the NFL.
Are you giving Zach Wilson some tips? If so, what are they?
I'm not giving Zach any tips. I'm not a quarterback at all. I'll let Zach sling the rock.
Fair enough. Fair enough. Okay, let's talk about the quarterback situation at BYU right now. It's clearly the number one storyline in training camp right now is who's going to be the guy to open up against Arizona. You have a unique relationship with each of these guys for varying reasons. I'm not going to ask you to pick a starter or do something mean like that, but I am going to ask you to explain how each of these quarterbacks are different from each other or just unique. So let's start with your brother, Baylor Romney. What makes him unique and a guy that could absolutely be the one that starts against Arizona?
Yeah, no, I think Baylor's skill set is in his calm attitude. He's composed. He's going to make the smart play. He's going to read the defenses. He's going to make the smart play and, march the ball up the field. He's calm. He's not going to get rattled if he gets sacked or if, things are against us. He's not going to get rattled, and he's going to step in. He's going to be poised, and he has that good quality that a quarterback has.
All right, let's do it with Jaron Hall now.
I think Jaron's leadership is what really separates him. Jaron is an outstanding leader. He's someone that everybody looks to in trying situations. He's also calm, and Jaron's super smart. He can read the defenses really good. He can make really smart decisions, and he has a cannon of an arm.
Okay, and finally, your high school quarterback, Jacob Conover.
I think Jacob's arm talent is one of the best arm talents in the country. He can put the ball exactly where he wants it. He can take shots downfield. He can, throw on the run, and he's got outstanding arm talent.
We don't need your offensive coordinator to break down the quarterbacks. We just have you do it, man.
Nah, man. See, I just have a different perspective. I'm the one catching the ball on the other side.
Who hurts your hands the most? That's the real question.
Oh man, if I'm running a slant route, I would say Jacob probably hurts my hands the most, man. He rifles it in there. He's got a cannon on him too.
There's that arm talent you're talking about. Okay, before we let you go, what do you feel like is the best thing that your team as a whole has accomplished in 2 weeks of fall camp?
The progress I've seen already, especially the first couple of days, the defense was handing it to the offense. They got us the first couple of days, which is normal. We're trying to get the chemistry and stuff building, and then the next 2 days, the offense, we really put it on the defense. And then ever since then, it's been back and forth. And so I think the competition between offense and defense and between everybody, individual position battles, one-on-one battles, I think the competition is what's really standing out to me. And I'm super proud of our team for that because, it's hard to keep battling against the same people every single day, but everybody's kind of maintained that energy throughout fall camp, and we're just looking forward to finally being able to compete against someone else come September 4th.
Is there any added motivation that it's against the University of Arizona, and that's your home state?
For me, there is, because I know personally 7 or 8 people on that team. I played in high school with, I think there's 5 guys from my high school that I played with that are on the Arizona team. And so for me personally, it's a lot of motivation. I want to go and I want to beat those guys.
I love it. Gunner, it's great to talk with you, my friend. Good luck to you the rest of camp. Let's give you some BYU Sports Nation karma to stay healthy, to stay well. Cannot wait for that season opener. Thanks, my friend.
Thanks, Spencer. Have a good one.
Gunner Romney with Spencer Linton. Gunner's expected to have a big year here. He's part of a loaded receiver group. How do you think he's going to play this year?
I like Gunner.
What a name, right?
You got to produce.
Gunner Romney.
You got to produce, and you got to have some guns, right?
He looks like he's been working.
He looks good. He looks big. The thing I like about Gunner the most is the way he's able to position his body in front of the DB and the ball. And so no matter how good the coverage is for a defensive back, you ain't getting around it. And that reminds me of Dennis Pitta. Identical to my boy Dennis, I love you, and how he placed his body to where, the DBs really didn't have a chance. So
yeah, and if Dennis had kept his helmet on, it would have been even better.
Hello, Jeremy.
Coming up, Tom Murphy is the lone AP voter who voted for the Cougars, and we ask him why in the world would he do that?
We go to Arkansas for that. And it's time to issue Jack Mooney a yellow card. We'll tell you why. This is BYU Sports Nation.
If I got hurt and was laid up at home, I wouldn't even think to call a lawyer. What a hassle. I'd want to meet them first.
What if I told you that for your first consultation, your lawyer will come to you, home or hospital?
Really?
Really.
They do that?
If you've been injured, we'll come to you. It's your job to get better. It's our job to deal with the insurance companies.
Learn more at siegfriedandjensen.com.
Welcome to a partnership where customer experience comes first. It's our focus. It's your expectation. We provide support to those that go the extra mile for all of us. Supplying products, training, and service for generations. Learn more at bradyindustries.com.
Wonder is kind of an incomplete zone to be in. You don't know all the answers. There's a stage in life when people are just naturally inquisitive. They want to know about the world. Sometimes society will kind of take that out of us. A show like Constant Wonder is meant to put us back in that zone of naturally, intuitively, wanting to explore and discover and see and learn. See and experience the world with new eyes on Constant Wonder.
This portion of BYU Sports Nation is presented by Visible Supply Chain Management.
The latest episode of After Further Review is available right now on the BYU TV app. Watch as Dave, Uncle B, and David look at high-performance players under the microscope this season. And you can also watch previous episodes on the app as well.
Heck yeah. Go to the BYU TV app. Jeremy Jordan alongside Brian Logan. Let's whip it. Cougar Whip Rounds presented by Visible Supply Chain Management, tackling America's most challenging shipping problem.
The NIL Built Bar post has 96.9 million impressions.
Woo!
And was worth $10 million in marketing revenue.
Incredible.
Marketing value. Who got the most value out of this, BYU or Bill?
It's hard to say.
No, it's not. It's easy.
I'm gonna say Built Bar, honestly. Like
Built for sure.
They got a lot of run. We're giving them even more run right now. But what an incredible moment! I dare say, this is the most viral moment. Is it in BYU history because of social media?
Yeah.
Like I think it is.
Easily.
97 million impressions. You couldn't. Well, I guess you could buy that for 10 million. But like, incredible moment.
I want to know how much product was sold after this.
Oh, from
Built. Like looking at the comments.
Yeah.
All I saw. Oh, I just ordered some. I got me a pack.
There was
getting me a pack.
a Ute fan, maybe more, that were like, I'm boycotting. It's like, no, you're not. Get it.
Why?
Washington football team head coach Ron Rivera said the following about Dax Milne. You see him coming out of his own element and starting to create who he is, his own persona. He also said he has progressed very well. He really has. Is Dax not only going to make the roster, but be a contributor with Washington?
I think so. Normally, I wouldn't say that about somebody who, got drafted in the 7th round. Or I would even say
second to last pick.
I would even say 5th, 6th, and 7th round. You're pretty much a free agent, basically.
Yeah.
And so usually I would say no, but I mean, when you have the head coach, talking about you, and you're making plays and you're showing up in a way that's, you're on the mind of the decision makers, I think you have a chance. And obviously, if you make a team, you have to contribute, right, on special teams. So if you mean by,
well, I mean will he
getting in, not sure.
Making the roster will be enough for me. It really will, because they only carry 6, and Washington actually has a pretty good group of receivers.
There you go. Just make the team.
Yeah.
Aaron Rodgers says he really likes Bronson Kafusi because he's the happiest guy in the locker room. Will Bronson make the Packers 53-man roster on personality alone?
No, but it's certainly, if you're coming down to 2 guys whose skill set is equal, you're going to take the guy you like a little more.
Of course.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I love that Aaron Rodgers loves Bronson Kafusi because we all love him too. He's great.
Look, man, even if...
By the way, he's a tight end now. I think some BYU fans didn't know.
Right.
He's a tight end now.
Now, check this out. Even if, let's say, the guy he's competing with has maybe a slight edge in other areas, I still would choose Bronson because of what Aaron Rodgers said.
And that laugh, man. All but 2 BYU Cougars at the NFL made it through the first cut. Are you surprised?
Nope. Actually, yes.
Surprised?
I am surprised, but I think it was sobering in the fact of like we are better. I said this last time I was on with you. We are better than what we think, right?
Yes.
And I think it's that moment, like moments like these, where it's like, man, we got that many guys in the league, and they're sticking, right? And they're contributing. Like we are good. Like we're good.
I love it. If a bunch more make it to the 53, that's even better, right? First cut, August 31st, to have to cut it down to 50.
That's the real cut.
Yep.
MWSU specialist tweeted a photo of a coach with a whiteboard talking to a player about kicking. It has a stick figure kicking a ball through the field goal post. Do you believe kicking is more complicated than this?
I'm sure it is, but I don't believe it's more complicated than this. I'm sure there's more. But Jake Goldroad makes it look easy.
Yeah, kickers aren't people, so.
Okay. You know what?
Punters are, though.
You think punters are people, but not kickers?
Yeah, no.
Why?
Specifically because they wore a blue jersey when I played. That means they're on the defensive side.
We're done.
That means they're on the defensive side, so anybody that's on the defensive side, we welcome you as humans and individuals.
Okay, you know what? Okay, last but not least, is Jack DeMooney out of line for this? He quoted a tweet that had a John Walsh highlight against San Diego State in 1993 for a touchdown to Steve Christensen. He said, "This was after your boy, hashtag I am Jack Samooney." Jack, it's DeMooney. Came up with that INT for you. I love you all. Go Cougs. Is he out of line for tweeting this?
Nope. Not at all.
Says the DB.
Not at all. No. Nope. That's just, see, like being a DB in a corner, man, it's a lifestyle, man. Like we can't change. It's in our DNA. We can't change the swag, the clout that we get. I mean, it's just natural, and it's only fitting. It's only right for a DB to acknowledge his accomplishments.
Let's see the interception. We've got the video.
Like I
Let's
helped
see if
you.
It's worthy.
I helped you.
Here's video proof.
Do this.
This is 93. This guy, this wannabe Steve Sarkisian's going back. Interception in the end zone. Okay, Jack's gonna return this.
That went right to him. He fumbled.
Oh, did they review this? Okay, and then the next play? Question mark. John Walsh deep to Steve Christensen. So, where was the receiver? Like that was the easiest interception of Jack DeMooney's career. I do love Jack, but I am going to give him a yellow for that.
Look,
mainly because he misspelled his own name.
for that reason. Look, I still, now that I've seen this, I want to backpedal.
Listen, you're good at backpedaling.
I want to backpedal a little bit.
You're great at backpedaling.
I thought it was something like spectacular, like goal line type stand, like.
Oh, it was a goal line.
He was
wide. It was a goal line interception.
Jack was wide open. He was wide open.
Jack should have run the other way. He was saying, this is a touchdown for San Diego State. Where's the receiver?
Man, he was wide
also,
open.
Jack ain't following no blockers right there either. Good gosh.
I don't understand, like, as a DB, when you get the interception, you run to the nearest sideline. You were already on the sideline. You Are you on the sideline?
That's awesome.
You just go.
This ain't Kahuku, Jack.
Oh, man. Okay. So now that I backpedaled
Another
on
great
that.
backpedal from Brian Logan on the field and off it.
Coming up, Jerem's 10 and 10 breaks down the opponent's uniforms.
Swagoo, let's go. And the biggest BYU fan in Arkansas, why AP voter Tom Murphy was the only dude to give BYU a top 25 vote. Plus BYU in Arkansas the next couple years. This is BYU Sports Nation.
Wrapping up in a Minky Couture luxurious blanket. Getting cozy with family and friends. A gift for everyone. Minky Couture, official luxury blanket of BYU Athletics.
Trio Orem Senior Living believes in empowering seniors to live life to the fullest. We help eliminate stress out of daily life when you live at Trio. Less time focusing on housework means you can socialize at one of our many events, with safety in mind, of course. And did we mention our spacious apartments with modern amenities? Learn more about setting up a private tour at trioorem.com.
Quick crack. Wash all you want. Don't drive dirty.
We're all in with BYU TV Sports. Don't miss BYU Women's Soccer tomorrow. Watch all of your favorite teams on BYU TV, your home for Cougar sports.
I've been worried about aliens my entire life, and now I'm gonna be one. How weird is that? That's super weird.
BYU Sports Nation is presented by the BYU Store, official outfitter of BYU fans everywhere.
BYU soccer kicks off their season tomorrow on BYU TV and the app. Watch as the Cougars host the Ohio State at 9 p.m. Eastern on BYU TV and the app.
Can't wait for it. Soccer season about to get underway. 15th ranked Cougars cannot wait. Welcome back to BYU Sports Nation in Studio B. The Associated Press College Football Top 25 poll came out earlier this week. There was one person in the whole country who voted BYU in the top 25. His name is Tom Murphy. He now joins us. He's from the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, the lone AP voter. He is in Barnhill Arena. That's where Nolan Richardson's famous teams played. Tom, we appreciate the time and the love for BYU.
Well, okay, look, I'm no Corky Simpson. I don't have the Cougars at number 1. But, hey, BYU winds up number 20 in the final poll. You guys can throw a big party for me.
Yeah, exactly. So why did you feel like BYU deserved to be 20th in your poll? And, again, you were the only dude that had BYU inside the top 25. We love it.
Yeah, I mean, it's a bit of a head-scratcher that no one else gave BYU a vote for, 24, 25, something like that. But if you believe in the foundation that Kalani has put forth there, it looks to me like a good foundation. I loved that BYU went out and played anybody who wanted to play football last year. And I understand, financially that was important, but I just liked it in the weirdest year we've ever seen in college football, that the Cougars just went and played anybody, that they came out, flew across the country and played Coastal late in the year. And, that was a great game. And then they ended up smoking UCF in the bowl game. So I just felt like, I know Zach Wilson's gone and a lot of talent is gone. But when you're looking at the last 5 teams in your preseason poll, it's a crapshoot. I mean, there's Utahs and Arizona States and Oklahoma States in there. And I just felt like BYU deserved a little merit right there.
Tom, do you think that the reason why BYU didn't get as much love as you gave them is just the brand recognition? Maybe there's a little bit of stigma around BYU and them just being athletic, or some of the social or political issues. Do you think maybe that played a role in BYU not getting any love?
That's a really good question, and I haven't considered it very much. I don't even think about that. And in fact, I'm looking forward to coming out to Salt Lake in a couple of years. But no, I just thought that with the great record last year and the fact that when you get to those last few spots in your poll, it could be anybody. And I know that the schedule will bear it out. That it will solve everything. And there's some good early games against Utah and Arizona State that are right there in the same position. So BYU wins those, they'll get a lot more votes.
Yeah, if BYU goes 2-0 or even 3-0, definitely will be in the top 25. We're talking with Tom Murphy from Arkansas, who gave the Cougars a top 25 vote. Want to ask you about BYU and Arkansas. Little known fact, these two are playing the next 2 years, 22 in Provo, 23 in Fayetteville, which should be fun. How often does Arkansas come that far west?
It's pretty rare. They had a home and away against USC about a decade and a half ago now. So it's pretty rare, but they've got a home and away with Utah coming up on the books. And I want to say the first year of that's 29. And honestly, this snuck up on me. I knew that BYU was on the schedule, but next year, that's wonderful. I was out in Salt Lake late June and early July this year, went to Yellowstone and Mount Rushmore. And I was out there on the 4th of July, and there was a sandstorm kicked up out of nowhere. You guys might remember. And it was pretty windy out there. But it's a rare deal. But I think Hunter Yurachek, has some friends in the business. And the Utah AD is a friend. And the SEC mandates that they play a Power 5 school per year. And so BYU or a Power 5 or a independent like BYU or the military academy. So it just worked out for them. And I'm looking forward to going back out west next year.
Tom, speaking of the SEC, what's the dynamic like when it comes to Oklahoma and adding Texas? How do you guys feel about it? And just the potential of this big league sort of emerging before our eyes.
Yeah, it makes things a lot tougher for teams like Arkansas who don't quite have the budget and the tradition. I mean, they won a national championship in '64, but it's been a while that they haven't won an SEC title. And so it's this recruiting ground. Arkansas did really well in Oklahoma recruiting last year, and now there's a school in that state that can tout SEC membership. Makes it tougher. Same with when Texas A&M joined the league in 2012. Arkansas had been able to, draw a lot of kids out of Texas. They still do, but it's just tougher now. And I don't know what they're going to do for scheduling. 16-team deals, a little bit cumbersome in my view, but they're going to be the first super conference, and I guess that's what Greg Sankey and those guys had in mind.
Yeah, it's going to be gnarly. Certainly, the expansion of the SEC, and then everything to do with BYU and Arkansas next year. It's going to be fun. Hey, when you're out here, seriously, come. We've got a broadcasting building. We'd love to host you and show you around, and we're looking forward to the matchup with Arkansas and BYU next year.
Reach out. We'll make that happen. Sounds good.
Okay, awesome. Tom, we appreciate the time, and thanks for the vote, man.
You bet.
That's Tom Murphy from the Arkansas Democrat-Gazette, the lone AP voter to give BYU a vote.
Look, man,
he likes the Cougs maybe more than we do in the top 25.
I think so. And he, what I love about him the most is that he's down to throw a party. If BYU gets ranked in the top 20, he said, fly me out and let's party together. So
I love that.
I can't wait. I really want BYU to be ranked for that very reason. Before it was just more selfish, but now I'm trying to party with Tom.
And I think it snuck up on all of us. Oh my gosh, BYU's hosting an SEC team next year in Provo. That'd be great. Arkansas, fantastic.
Okay. Coming up, today's Rise and Shout.
And my 10 and 10. Only two more of these this week and next week. The opponents with the best uniforms. Yeah, let's go. Utah even make the top 10? This is BYU Sports.
No.
This portion of BYU Sports Nation is presented by Bodyguards. Protection for a life worth living.
Hey Cougars, Coach Dave Rose here. I might not be on the court right now, but I still play on my sport court basketball court at home. Now more than ever, we all need a safe place to stay home, stay healthy, and play with family. I have an active family with my kids, grandkids, former players. My wife and I decided the best thing we could give our family is the gift of backyard memory. Sport Court provides a place to help kids become champions, and they're certainly popular in our neighborhood. For our new home, we chose Sport Court. Learn more about designing yours at sportcourt.com.
What makes BYU TV's Supergirls of Summer so super? Their bravery, service, honesty, courage, curiosity, kindness, determination, and their desire to change the world around them. Watch the Supergirls of Summer on BYU TV and the free BYU TV app.
This is BYU football with Kalani Sitake and Greg Wrubell.
When I was younger, I was a better dancer. Don't show any more dancing. Yeah, okay, good. I think we've developed some really good habits the last couple of weeks and looking to step it up again. A lot of great things can happen when they care.
Not bad. That's good stuff.
Hey. Yeah, thank you for ending on that one. That was a good one.
This portion of BYU Sports Nation is presented by Mountain America Credit Union, guiding you forward.
BYU Sports Nation is always on demand via the free BYU TV and BYU Radio app.
Or download the podcast. Just Google BYU Sports Nation podcast. And don't forget to subscribe, rate, and review the show.
Only 2 more 10 and 10s today and next Wednesday, presented by Bodyguards, protection for a life worth living. Learn more at bodyguards.com. Let's go.
10 lists in 10 weeks. It's Jerem's 10 and 10.
To week 9, unis today. Let's go. Not listed Idaho State and Georgia Southern. Don't at me. Number 10, Utah State. The Aggies have raised their game recently. Navy, black in 2019 versus BYU. White helmet options add to a more diverse look from the Fighting Merlin Olsen.
I don't really like that, the Navy on the black.
You don't like the Navy on the black?
It hurts my eyes.
Okay, well, that's why they're number 10. Number 9, Virginia. The blue, white, and orange combos are unique in college football. Not a ton of orange around FBS. About 15 schools of the 130. 3 different shirts, 2 pants, 2 helmets. They've mixed it up in recent years. Bronco, you dog.
You know what? They could have like one of the best uniforms out there, just because of the colors and
orange is unique.
Like their scheme, yeah. But they just chose not to do anything with it.
I wonder
orange
why.
Is my favorite color, by the way.
Orange is your favorite color.
Favorite color. Yeah.
You like the Dutch national team in soccer as well?
I don't know what that is, but yep.
Number 8, Washington State. Crimson and white with 2 types of gray. 4 different colors to play with. No black, but a darker gray. Maybe it's because of Utah. I don't love a crimson uni typically, but 2 options of gray is unique.
Yeah, I kind of just feel like meh.
You're not high on 10 through 8 right now. Well, that's why they're 10 through 8. Number 7, Arizona State. I'm not a huge fan of the maroon and gold combo, but the all-white uniforms with the white helmet look very clean. One note here, the only Chinese-born player in FBS plays at Arizona State and had his name written in Chinese on his nameplate last season. Very cool. I like that one.
I think Arizona could be another one of those schools that...
Wait, Arizona State?
Arizona State. I'm sorry. Arizona State.
I was like, we'll get to Arizona.
Arizona State. That because of the color combination could have something, unique. But again, I mean, if you have unique colors and you don't do anything like swaggy with it, it kind of almost looks like hideous.
Maroon is very polarizing. You either love it or hate it.
Yeah.
Number 6, South Florida. The green and gold can look cool. When it's more of a neon, I guess I like it more because it's the Seahawks color rush of bright green. The gold helmet is sleek as well. Too bad these are better than the team is.
I think they should have a better gold, like a deeper gold.
Oh, a deeper gold. I kind of like the bright.
Ooh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay. I see.
Number 5, Arizona. Inspired by the Desert Swarm teams of the 1990s, when Arizona was actually good at times. The simplicity of the white and blue with red trim is a streamlined look for a team that's trying to streamline its program to a bowl game.
I like Arizona. I like the uniform. I like the colors. I like the stripes on their shoulders. It kind of makes like this retro, but modern, unique.
It's a 90s out. We're gonna see the white shirts, by the way, against BYU.
All white.
BYU's wearing the royal.
Oh, okay. Nice.
Number 4, Utah. The Utes have done a ton with their uniforms over the years, adding black, getting white helmets, going all crimson sometimes. I don't like it because Utah, but it's an improvement.
I have no comment.
No comment. Number 3, Baylor. The green and gold. Nope, we're just skipping right through this. Sorry. Control room's like, hey, we just started some B-rolls. Number 3, Baylor. The green and gold mixed with the all-white sometimes can be the best thing out of Waco outside of Magnolia Table. The all-yellow look is way too bright, though. Generally, I like Baylor's uniforms. A few helmet options are good as well.
Listen, see, this is another one with me where I would actually rank them a little bit. I think higher. You know,
you would go higher.
I don't think they'd be as low. Maybe just because.
Wait, you mean lower?
I mean like
5+.
Yeah.
Okay, I have them 3. You don't like that?
Yeah.
I like their all whites. Their all whites look real slick.
The all whites are good. The one with the green pants. I think the yellow is throwing me off. When you got an ugly color,
it's gold.
That is mustard yellow. That's mustard yellow,
you know what?
man.
Take it up with Jeff Grimes.
When you put mustard on something, that's what it looks like.
Take it up with Eric Mateo. Number 2, Boise State. Traditionally, the Broncos have the second most uniform combos in FBS to Oregon. I don't like the all blue on the blue, but outside of that, it's pretty awesome. The all orange is kind of weird, but the combinations are dope. 4 different helmets, numerous other options. BYU's getting closer to this idea.
Yeah. Oh, this is good.
Nice picture of Cade Fennegan, who's now a BYU quarterback from last year. And the top uniform of any team BYU played this year, USC. You can see the Trojans jerseys when you think about it, because there are 2. A more traditional look with the cardinal gold, 2 options for shirts, same gold pants, same helmet. USC doesn't have any nameplates to this day. I'd love to see them go that direction. They probably need to with NIL at some point, but I respect the fact it's lasted this long.
Yeah, the minimal list idea, concept is what I like.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
Okay, there you go. BYU's unis, I'd put up pretty high on this list. I'd put them probably top 3 or 4. I really like them.
Number 1.
Our question of the day, what's the greatest what if in BYU sports history? At not Jerem Jordan? Who is this? I didn't know this existed. What if BYU players didn't go on mission trips and get bigger, faster, stronger, and more mature? Signed every opposing coach? Yeah, that's great. Let's see. Our elite voice of the day, presented by Sundance Mountain Resort. At Chaplain Schumann on Twitter, who weighed in yesterday as well. What if BYU Sports Nation had never happened? Just glad I do not live in that universe, alternate universe. Keep it rolling, Jerem Jordan, Spencer Linton, and Brian Logan, I might add. Thank you. That's very kind of you. Today's Rise and Shoutouts are presented by Mountain America, the official credit union of BYU Athletics. So last week we talked about a Dax Milne card that was up for 99 cents on eBay.
Yep.
Sold for $41. That's pretty good, man.
That's really good.
That's 41 times the value?
Let's do my card next.
Autographed. Let's do it. And rise and shout out to the Brock Markham and family. He has a son, Damien, who has a deadly disease. I found out about this yesterday. They're trying to raise funds to find a cure. If you want to learn more, watch a YouTube video. I tweeted it out yesterday. Our best wishes to Brock Markham and Damien and the entire family. Okay, our thanks to today's guests, Gunner Romney and Tom Murphy.
And shout out to my boy, Dennis Pitta. We had time for you today. Conversation continues 24/7 on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. Use the hashtag BYUSN.
Brian, I'm Jerem. Shout out to RJ Anderson. See you tomorrow for more BYUSN. Go Cougs! Gold, not yellow.